you could actually consider just taking on h5. We talk about different win conditions. If you're not believing in the attack here, then maybe you do capture that pawn on h5 and just kind of call the bluff.
Well, he's playing on both sides. He's maintaining attacking opportunities, but he's also introducing positions where white goes into a bad endgame. If the rook slides over to e3, sheltering the queen from the rook, as you mentioned, that h5 pawn is loose. If you play queen to g4, f2 could be loose in some variations. Maybe I throw in rook g5. What targets does Nepo have here to generate counterplay?
Yeah, probably the only thing about Arjun's position that hasn't been realized yet is that bishop on c8. It's actually performing a very important defensive task on the pawn on d7, and if you play d5, it's covering e6, but it hasn't developed yet. We do see queen d2, he prioritized the f2 pawn over the h5 pawn, but what we're seeing here in both games so far is just that little bit of a push from Erigaisi, right? An extra pawn. I wouldn't say he's got anything to complain about from this game.
He's up a full pawn here, and what you'd like to do is, Black, find a way to get the kings off. Queens off. You can't get the kings off. You get the queens off, then your king on g8 goes to e7. I'll eventually start pushing the d pawn. And if you're wondering why he didn't push the d pawn earlier, it was still blocking white's bishop, still taking away counterplay, and he just didn't want to give Nepo any targets. Nepo likes to attack. The problem here, e6 might be considered a target, but as long as that bishop on b3 is closed off, I just don't see it. I think if I'm in Nepo's shoes right now, I realize I'm down a pawn. I realize I have no advantage. I'm going to play fast and just make the conversion hard. If I try to generate an attack, I expose my own position and my own faults in like the bishop on b3, the pawn structure. No, I think at this point, just like Arjun tried to convert this, like he did in the previous game, Nepo just went down a pawn quite quickly and confidently, put up stubborn defense. I don't see what other option there is here.
And there's some big threats on the board coming. The queen just went back to to b6, excuse me. So the c6 pawn moving up to c5, moving up to c4. Eric, even if we don't win that bishop, I'm concerned that the bishop's going to retreat to a2, maybe if you move your king first, and the bishop is 100% trapped on that square. So c5, c4 is not just about maybe winning the bishop, but also just trapping it.
As you mentioned, it traps the bishop. You push that pawn to c4. White doesn't have a d pawn or b pawn to pry that open, to play d3 or b3. So you're right. If black gets c5, c4, I think this game will be over.
C4 was forced, Eric. I'm willing to say forced, because if black played c4, the bishop would be 100% locked out of the game. This looks like a terrible move. The bishop is practically trapped now, but at least in the future, you can move that other c pawn on c2, and the bishop can make use of the b1, h7 diagonal. So this doesn't look pretty. I expect d4, keeping the pawns on dark squares. Big achievements for Arjun, but I do think that Nepo had to play this move.
Yeah, I think Nepo's doing the right things right now. He's back a little bit on time. And you mentioned the move d4. I think d4 makes sense. Pushes on a dark square. You don't want to allow white's bishop to join the game easily. But when you play a move like d4, you're also losing some squares. These last couple of moves, maybe Nepo puts his queen on e5. Look at that queen on e5. It puts pressure on c5. Puts long-term pressure on that e6 pawn. And yes, white's position looks ugly, but at the end of the day, it's up to Arjun to figure out, how am I going to make progress here? How am I going to trade? How do I get the queens off? How do I get the rooks off? And even looking at that e6 pawn, another question is, how can I bring this bishop on c8 as an active piece in the game, not just, sitting on c8 or d7 defending e6?
Yeah, let's remember, it hasn't moved yet. Matter of fact, he hasn't completed development as of yet. Rook f4,
nice
much
move.
More aggressive move. So if the pawn on c4 captures on d5, immediately we're looking at pawn to c4, hitting that bishop. It is pinned thanks to the queen on b6. So this move is much different than d4. I think they're both good moves, but this is really going for it, Eric.
a5, I love it. Nepo is a sharp player. He's looking for active solutions. If you take on a5, then we once again have to calculate c takes d5 because there's no more pin on the b file.
There's no more pin. That is a crafty move there. And even if you, sort of decline it, don't accept this pawn sacrifice, move your queen backwards, that's not where you want your queen. Queen b7, queen b8, just in order to maintain the connection there.
Things are getting very sharp here because in some position you might be able to take on d5.
Yeah.
It requires calculation. C takes d5, pawn c4, and the question is, can I then play a move like g3? There's a lot of calculation involved right now. It helps that Arjun's bishop is in the game because, yes, black is banking on c4 working if you take on d5, but that requires the rook to stay on the fourth. So Nepo's looking to take on d5 and meet a move like c4 with a move like queen e3 or g3. I think g3 is required first. It just depends. Can that rook stay on the fourth? If it can, that's great for the attacking chances. If it can't, this might be a chance for Nepo to get back in the game. And queen e5, I love that move, Amon.
Yeah, it's a different way to try to get back in the game. Yes, you're trading queens. You are down a pawn. Matter of fact, you might even be down another pawn after pawn takes on c4, but you have rook takes on c5 that you can throw in there. This is not necessarily just, only chances for Arjun. I think that with the d pawn loose here, you have to make some big decisions if you're Arjun Erigaisi.
You mentioned the key line. You take on c4. I have the Zwischenzug, the in-between move. Rook takes c5, hitting the bishop on c8 with check. Arjun plays king f7. He might meet c takes d5 with king f6, bring the king a bit closer. But all of a sudden, we have material equality here.
Yeah, this has been a big comeback for Nepo. He's also still up that time, that 30 seconds. He's a very, very confident and quick player. You can't take on e6 with the pawn. King takes on e5, e7. The bishop can still catch that pawn with bishop d7. So you have to move your rook away here. So if you go rook back to e1, rook e3, I guess we're going to see pawn to c4 and try to take that d pawn, Eric.
Are there any in-between moves here? G3 is always the move I'm looking at because if you play... Oh, he takes here first. I was going to mention, if you play G3, maybe you can harass the rook. Nepo goes for this line. I think, the decision is obvious. It's bishop a4 or bishop a2. With bishop a4, you have to watch out for c3 check. And now the rook on f4 hits a4. He plays bishop c2.
Yeah, now c3 doesn't work the same way, so he's going to go on the other side of the board. h5, h4, g5. The bishop on a2 is out of the game right now, but white can play king c3. The thing is, look at that bishop on a2. It is 100% not participating here, so you're going to see moves like g5 for Arjun. He's not looking to do anything because it's white who is struggling for a move.
Yeah, and what you mentioned, pushing on the king's side, this position might be equal material, but it's not an equal position. If black ever manages to win g2 in a race, that outside h-pawn is very, very close to queening, and those pawns on g2 and f3 are in light squares.
You're playing up a piece, Eric.
Yeah.
The bishop on a2 goes back to b1, cannot move away. So much effort. That's why you see g4. He's trying to open things up, crash through. There's bishop d5, the rook on g4. You're basically playing 2-on-1 here.
If you can't win that pawn on c4, you're completely right, and Nepo's not making any moves that contribute there. He's choosing passive defense. When Ian is playing passive defense, you know he's not comfortable.
Yeah, he always likes to solve his problems actively, but I mean, it is just plain and simple.
What
The
a
bishop
move.
on a2 cannot participate in this game. The g2 pawn will fall, and at this point, you can even take with the bishop and just play h3, h2, h1 queen.
It's the best way to do it. You take on g2 with the bishop and you're sheltering. Then you play h3, h2. But you know what? What's the rush? G2 will fall regardless. Arjun is saying, I'm going to optimize my king position first. There might be a position where the king gets the c5 pawn, and then he throws in the rook g3 check first,
Right.
forces the king further back, and then takes on g2.
King c5 certainly here looks like the right move. Activating that king, as you said, intending rook g3, and rook g3 comes with an even bigger threat of c3 after. I think you have to take this pawn. I mean, it's been so many moves without actually capturing this g-pawn. It's finally time.
He's just deciding, does he take first or does he throw in c3? Nepo is down almost 20 seconds.
You
That
can
pawn-
probably run the h-pawn, h3, h2, but you know what? You start to get a little nervous. Don't want to lose a7.
I think you can just run it because
Yeah.
your bishop controls the queening square. So he's just pushing h3, h2.
That's
he
it.
slides the rook over. He's making a queen, and he still covers a8.
And
This is a lost position
Yeah.
for Jan.
This is looking effortless. Arjun Erigaisi, he's up on time. He just needs to slide that rook over, and he has done rook f2. Notice the bishop on d5. Compare it to the bishop on a2. d5 covers h1, helps black queen. It also stops white from queening. It's doing everything.
Nepo's taking a breather here. I think he knows he's in lost position. He's just trying to stabilize his thoughts. But how depressing is it to play this full game without your bishop? What a win by Erigaisi.
Wow. Arjun Erigaisi with the win for Genji. And remember, of course, Eric, this is not the end of the match, but is a big step in the right direction for Arjun. Both games he's been up upon. In one of them, he finally got the conversion. That's a pretty big deal and a lot of confidence going into the next one. Yeah, I'm looking at this this game, Eric, and just thinking back on it, Arjun has looked really, really good in this matchup, right? Compared to Nepo, he's had chances in both games. He's converted in one of them. He could have converted in both. You have to be feeling confident if you're Arjun.